All right. Well, welcome. We got
How do,
the,
Nick?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. It's
We
too
got,
bad we've been arguing violently for the last 15 minutes before coming on. But
yeah, right.
now,
Yep. And here we thought we weren't going to get an intro video, and there it
yes, we got an intro video.
is. Apparently, it's hardware
Hallelujah.
disabled, but hey, it worked. So, well, good
How do
deal.
you do this morning or this day, Nick?
It technically, I guess, it's still my morning out here. A couple hours behind you on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Been good. Yeah, been good. Ran some errands and picked up some stuff for gardening already, and looking forward to that.
Oh,
So
that's beautiful. Good, good.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm a little more nervous on this one than I was on the previous. Uh,
yeah. On
I guess,
the author, meet the author. That was our last one. So
right.
yeah,
I guess
Uh,
because this is the inaugural episode of the Brambled Path.
right. Yeah. I think in general, the it's easier to just kind of have a, hey, we did this thing, now let's talk about it, and now it's, let's do this thing.
Yeah.
And the thing is talking about more topics, more subjects,
Yeah.
and so I think that's yeah, the thing is this, so that's a little different. So but
So,
well, yeah, why don't you give us a little intro? What we talked about, how do we expand upon beyond the author narrator dynamic, and what's a future, what's a platform look like, something you've always wanted to do. And you said, yeah, let's do a series. Let's podcast broadcast series, and I'm like, well, what are you going to call it? And you're like, the Brambled Path. And it was without hesitation. I'm like, okay, I got the channel set up. So tell me
because
about that. What's your vision?
I had a meditation class that I taught before called the Brambled Path. That's why I spent a lot of time thinking about the name of that, and then I just knew instantly I wanted to continue. And I'll get into it. I've written out an introduction on what this is. By the way, Nick, when it's on YouTube, is it called a podcast or a
Ah,
broadcast?
sorry, I got some background noise here. Technical difficulties. Okay, so when it's on YouTube, is it called a
Podcast, broadcast.
podcast broadcast? I don't know.
Okay.
Um, I mean, let's put it this way: a podcast is generally put out as an audio only thing.
Yeah.
Um, but what I'm seeing now in the trend of these things is that people are podcasting, but they're also recording them. Now, whether they're going live with the broadcast, I don't know. It's mixed, but what I get is that really it's a series of people talking about topics, or having guests, and I think the trendy term, the buzzword, is podcast versus broadcast these days. So
Okay.
how that applies, I think you can go either way.
All
In
right.
2024, I think they're pretty interchangeable, right?
Yeah.
So
Or we could call it a show.
yeah, yeah, a
All right.
web
So
series.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wrote this two-page thing. I'm going to not read it in a stiff way. I'm going to try to make it as if I'm just talking, but I am reading to you. When I'm a little more seasoned at this sort of thing, it will be um, just talking. But I wrote this out because I wanted to get this exactly right. So are you ready, Nick?
I'm ready. Yeah.
And hopefully our viewers are also our smart and good-looking viewers. All right, here it goes. I have noticed that the world is jam-packed full of podcasts and YouTube shows. You have too. Anyone and everyone has a show now, talking mainly about diet, fashion, music, film, the power struggle of politics, food, and sports. And don't forget the influencers who tell you what to buy, tell
Mm.
you to buy, even things you never considered wanting. The talk is incessant, of vastly varying quality. The sources are seemingly infinite, and it starts to feel like an overwhelming thicket of opinion and perspective that uh, bears down on you with noise rather than liberating you with signal. Am I right? That's my experience of it anyway. It's like keeping up with all this cacophony has become a full-time job for no pay and oftentimes no payoff. Your time is valuable to you, and there are crushing demands on your freedom, cluttering your life. It is information overload to the nth degree. I'm putting on my glasses. So why would you listen to the Brambled Path YouTube broadcast? What, if anything, singles it out? For this first broadcast, I will tell you about my aspirations, what I hope to create in partnership with my colleague, Nic Davis. This is my vision statement, and you can decide from hearing this whether or not it's worth your time. What will distinguish the brambled path in the overcrowded marketplace of ideas, at least aspirationally, are the following: the topics, the originality, the kindness, the level of consciousness, the depth of perspective, and the realism and yet the hope. That's one category: realism and yet hope. The topics, the originality, the kindness, the level of consciousness, the depth of perspective, and the realism yet the hope. By topics, I mean there are not a ton of YouTube shows or podcasts out there who are addressing, with unrelenting depth of seriousness but impertinent humor whenever possible, the subjects of death and dying and bereavement and grief, in addition to rigorous spiritual practice for maximal living, systems thinking, which is a way of addressing our world's crises effectively, and surviving the future as a species, all in one. Brambled path indeed. The path of life, especially these days, is full of brambles, dangers, steep cliffs, and unnerving threats, some that we see and many that we do not. We will address these subjects head on to the best of our abilities. We have the conviction that we don't want to dissociate from the reality of the challenges with fluffy entertainment or unserious thinking. It's too late for that. We invite you to come along with us on this journey. So, excellent topics that truly matter, and originality too. By this originality, I mean we have great original sources that we'll be drawing from, such as the writings of Shenzhen Young, Nora Bateson, David Fleming, Joanna Macy, Margaret Wheatley, Ken Wilber, Joanne Cacciatore, and Stephen Jenkinson. Each of these thinkers and contributors is a world of strikingly original thought in themselves, groundbreaking, important, but we blend them and then look at them through both left and right brain hemispheres so that we are both logical and creative in outlook on the blend The result we aspire is a blend of something that looks a lot like wisdom, that can make a difference in your world in an original way. Wouldn't it be a bummer if the great topics and the original perspectives, constantly shifting like a kaleidoscope, were not infused with kindness at all points? At the end of the day, you would turn away from our show and we wouldn't blame you. Interpersonal warmth. Nic has it, John has it, kind of. We bring it to you. A big part of the problems in the world today is catastrophic failure of kindness. Not as a fake smile, but a bona fide ingredient in actually and actively caring about how people are doing. We promise you we will care about you, the viewers, and how you are doing in life. How are you experiencing the broadcast? We already do care. We will interact with you as much as possible, reach out to you, and respond with unwavering kindness at all times, even if kindness sometimes requires a tough moment or two. You will notice it. If you send us messages and comments after the broadcast, we will respond to them. Unconditional positive regard for all viewers as an essential ingredient, or the show isn't worth doing or watching. Now, about this level of consciousness thing, I can't describe that in adequate depth in an introduction. I read a 500-page book on the subject and came away from it with only an inkling of what it is about. But suffice it to say, as a child sees the world through a different lens than an infant, and a different lens from a 19-year-old, and a 60-year-old understands the world through a different filter of interpretation than a 25-year-old. So, society and culture also evolve through different lenses, filters of interpretation. Those are what we mean by levels of consciousness, a spectrum of consciousness. What are our shared ways of looking at things, of framing issues, and of approaching questions and issues? And the most recent level of consciousness, the highest one, from which this show will emanate if we have gotten our sleep and had enough coffee and have not gotten freaked out by various catastrophes, is this: we are agents of our evolution if we agree to take the responsibility seriously and collectively. But all levels of consciousness need to be at least somewhat honored for their partial truths, for their dignities, as well as with awareness of their catastrophes. So the topics, the originality, the kindness, the level of consciousness, and also we aspire to depth of perspective. This will be attained as often as possible by consulting a diversity of views on a topic, living with them, turning them over in our mind, being skeptical of our conclusions, rethinking, and then offering our thoughts in a provisional and receptive way rather than authoritative. We will cultivate religiously a depth of perspective. It is so easy when looking at our society and culture today, when contemplating the depths of the climate emergency, the rise of violent fascism worldwide, the dissolving of the fabric of civilization, the triumphalism of the ignorant and the reckless, to succumb to a well-argued and fully substantiated despair. Humanity could very well go extinct in the next 70 years. But we are stubborn and will not despair. We will stay true to hope about the human project. And if that fails, we will at least stay true to hope in a graceful exit from the planet for our species. But we're not there yet. Those are the aspirations of the Brambled Path. Those are our selling points for you to consider listening to us. We will not be clamoring gracelessly for your attention. We will speak in our indoor voices, but our offer is compelling for the right viewers. Authentically important topics, beginning with bereavement and grief, but branching out beyond that into the human predicament, sometimes referred to as the meta crisis. Bona fide originality, noticeable kindness, an evolved level of consciousness, and a penetrating depth of perspective. Realism, but unrelenting hope in the light of enormous danger. We are holding on to the lamp of hope while looking squarely at the facts. Interested? Please subscribe and sign up for alerts when we post, and watch and comment. We would love that. Thank you for listening. And by the way, I wrote this in the third person, but I'll switch over to first person. Rather than saying John, I'll say, I have been a hospice chaplain for 14 years, accompanying and helping some 3,300 people as they died, providing bereavement services to their loved ones, friends, and families after they died. I raised two daughters by myself for 10 years after the death of their mother. I am intimately familiar with the topic of grief on which I speak. I've been reading and thinking about climate change, soil depletion, biodiversity collapse, and the finite supply of oil, which we are quickly using up, for 40 years. I've been meditating and practicing yoga for 30 years. I see as tied together in an underground way the grief illiteracy of the West and the potential extinction of humanity at our collective hand. The common thread is dissociation. And I am author of the novel Heart Like a Bonfire, which was beautifully narrated by one Nic Davis on Audible. Nic, do you have a little bio to add, please?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. That was well done. Thank you. Uh, well, as per usual, I am always amazed at your sage wisdom and the tapestry that your words weave in my mind as I hear you putting that all together. It's truly a beautiful coming from such a beautiful place of love and compassion. And that's been my experience working with you, whether it's in your writing or our discussions. But yeah, it's an honor and privilege to share this platform with you and join you on this journey of the Brambled Path. Um, but yeah, a couple of things that resonated with me. Um, I mean, and here we are using these multimedia streams or technologies that
Yeah,
are so commonplace in today's society.
without which we
Um,
wouldn't know each other.
right, right, and but at the same time, the majority of the what we see is highlighting the dehumanizing parts of it, right? So the disconnection, the dissociation, all of that. So um, as I think about this endeavor, what would society be like if it was in the intentions were to enrich people's lives and to bring these topics to share wisdom, advice, knowledge that just enriches everyone's lives. And if that was a requirement, I think about in today's culture and society, as we look at like new building developments or new community planning, how there's a requirement to have X amount of green space and all that. but we don't have the same standards when it comes to technological developments. As how are you going to continue to capture the human experience or to make this authentic? Um, because that's just as important. It's kind of like the digital version of creating green spaces. You know,
Oh, that's
how are
so
you
great.
how are you humanizing things? And
Oh, that's beautiful.
not every tech developer or software company or whatever considers human factors in these engineering. And it's not just the way we interact with it, but also how do you keep humans humanized? Um, and I
I
mean,
love
it's
this digital green space.
yeah,
I love
right.
that. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's good for the soul. You know, where's that soulful connection that we miss and all this tech? It's just overwhelming. Um, but the emphasis seems to be selling off our humanity for our data, our time, our attention, just to the highest bidder. And it just lacks personal human connection in it all. So I think this the changes in things like this grassroots efforts, like the Brambled Path, that as you another word that stuck out is consciousness,
Hmm.
because the universal truth is that life is our most valuable resource, lifetime, this existence that we're fortunate and gifted and should grateful for, and that when we face our mortality, that we and our loved ones can embrace death and grief with dignity and pride and admiration for our legacies. So, um, I think it doesn't get any more bare bones than that. Like, how are we dealing with our resiliency and death and dying and grief and bereavement? Um, and if you can start from there, then just imagine how much more enriched life could be. So yeah,
I
but
love
um,
that.
but yeah, or the alternative is we continue to battle the demons of our life that wasn't lived wholeheartedly. So I like that idea of what comes to mind is wholeheartedness. Putting that into these tech ventures and discoveries and grassroots efforts like the Brambled Path. So yeah, I look forward to embarking on this journey, this experience with you and with any viewers or guests. I just and as I mentioned, time is valuable, life is precious, and anybody who shares that with us is a true gift, and means a lot. So as long as there's an opportunity to make some meaningful connection, insight, spark of hope, or just wrap someone in a virtual hug to lighten their load for the day or for whatever they're experiencing would be such an honor. So, um, but yeah, so my bio, I'm an
Yes,
RN.
your bio.
My
Yes.
bio that
Let
was my
me just
college.
interrupt for 1 second here, Nick. While
Go ahead.
you've been talking,
Yeah,
we've had Evelyn, the Girl Scout, has arrived to sell us Girl Scout cookies, and is
nice.
here in our foyer with her mother and sibling. Hello, Evelyn. We're excited to get those cookies from you. Yes. All right. I just had to acknowledge
Well,
we've
that's
got
good.
we're getting Girl Scout cookies arriving while we're speaking.
Hey, that's
I won't
important.
tear into them until after we're off air.
Well, hey, I wouldn't blame you if you did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
I wouldn't blame you if you did. And that's a good that's funny. My oldest daughter is named Evelyn, so
Oh yeah.
she's not a Girl Scout. But yeah, when I heard that, I was like, oh, these little
Evelyn's our impressive young neighbor. But
yeah.
anyway, so your bio.
What's that? Oh, my bio. Yeah. Yeah. So I am I'm a nurse, RN, and I've been with I work with the Department of Veteran Affairs, I've been doing that for about 5 years there, but I've been a nurse for over a over a decade. But yeah, I've seen it all, from the emergency room to, you know, oncology, psychology, NICU, and it's just, I even did a brief stint as a in a doctorate program for my nurse practitioner in psychiatric mental health nursing.
Oh, wow.
But
I don't think I knew that about you.
the pandemic hit, and I reevaluated life and decided I did not want to become a provider and the focus on family more than my career. So that
There you go.
family took the priority, and the
Yeah.
pandemic helped me realize that. So, but yeah, and as a sort of hobby, I ventured into the idea of medical narration, and audiobook narration, and um, really just trying to give some stories that have touching lessons or experiences, a voice, as much as I can, just as a hobby, as an interest, and hopefully maybe one day it'll support a autonomous lifestyle that I don't have to clock in and out for. But yeah,
That'd be beautiful.
so yeah,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so I think that's my background. The dad of two, married to my wife that I met in college for 20, gosh, met her what 23 years ago now. So coming
Oh,
up
yeah.
our 17-year anniversary. So yeah, I think I mentioned this before. That, when we were doing the audiobook narration, for Heart Like a Bonfire, yeah, that we've had some experiences both distant and recently with death
Yeah.
and hospice. My wife's father passed away of lung cancer, which was definitely one of the core narratives and stories in Heart Like a Bonfire, with one of the patients that was dying of lung cancer. So seeing that from the family perspective, and experienced the passing of a good dear friend that I've known since college with kidney cancer, this last in the last 6 months. So it doesn't matter whether you're in your 20s or teens or youth or 80. This business of death, dying, grief, and bereavement, it doesn't know any ages. Yeah, it's a universal experience, and anything we can do to support those who experience that in as healthy of a way as they can, so that it isn't as debilitating. That's the hope, I guess, is for me. Um,
100%.
yeah,
And also fosters connection,
yeah,
you know, so that we're bearing it together to some degree.
hmm,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. And one of the people I'd love to get on our show, I mentioned to you in correspondence, her name's Mia. She lives in Hungary. I think she's the wisest bereavement and grief person in the world, really.
yeah,
Um, and she talks about the blessing that grief is, which is counterintuitive,
hmm,
to say the least. Doesn't feel good at all. But she talks about it being an initiation into a different level of awareness, which I find to
wow,
be.
that's interesting. I as I think about that, my yeah, 4 days ago. Um,
4 days ago?
4 days ago, I had to look at my calendar here. 4 days ago was the anniversary of my best childhood friend's mother's passing, and ironically, as I think about it, yes, she died of lung cancer as well. And I remember that day very vividly, because my best friend and I, we'd kept in touch after moving apart, at one point halfway across the world. Another situation, Spokane, I'm in Spokane, Washington, and he's in Missoula, Montana area. So just, a couple states away. And his birthday was on March 5th, and I didn't get a chance to see him on his birthday. So I decided to drive over for his 18th birthday and visit him the following weekend. And I got there, and he's like, things are not going well with my mom. We picked up his stepdad, who was at the bar and couldn't drive home. And, you know, 2 days later, I was with him that weekend, and his mother passed away in the hospital in the ICU.
Wow.
Um, yeah. And so I just remember that whole experience because she was, such a good motherly figure. And I guess to bring this back to what you were saying about grief, introduction to grief is
An initiation
an
into a higher
initiation.
level.
Yeah, initiation. So he had that at 18 years old. I mean, on around his 18th birthday. And I guess in a way I did too, even though it wasn't
Yeah.
as
Right.
deep as his. But I still remember like a birthday, March 12th every year.
Mm.
Um, and what that does for younger people as far as their worldview at that after that initiation. Um, it's
Something.
it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
To, yeah, does that seem fair to say? Is that the right way to say that?
I would go with it.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know if it is or not, but I would go with it.
Well, I guess it's a blessing in the sense that you now have a perspective, an empathy that is unfortunate that you have, but when you do experience that at such a young age and you do gain that initiation and this new wisdom, this new perspective, how
it's like
powerful that can be. Yeah.
it's like you're brought into a club,
Right. Right.
the bereaved.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
More, I mean, club for fraternity. I don't know. It's a brotherhood, a sisterhood. I mean,
Yeah.
go with the 2024. I don't know what's the 2024 PC version of a brotherhood or a
Yeah.
sisterhood. um, a
I
collective.
don't know.
I don't. Yeah, they all sound too sterile to be warm and inviting. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. We'll have to figure that out.
By the way, Nick, way back when you were talking about data, it's not all just data, but there's a human dimension too. It's interesting that you phrase that because the second person that I list when I listed the sources, I mentioned Shenzhen Young, and then I said Nora Bateson. She
Uh huh.
has a book called Warm Data,
Okay.
and I'm reading. She's saying there is warm data that we overlook. Um, Everybody has warm data about their lives, which we, in our public discourse, don't really take into consideration. So it's just kind of interesting. That will be something that we'll bring up is her insights into that.
And warm data. I like that.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's. It's funny. There's these terms like that, warm data, that sort of evolve as we connect. Look to the goes back to this dehumanizing, right? How do we bring back concepts to humanize them a little bit more? Um, and I think about that with economics, and I'm not an economics person, and I didn't even really like studying economics. But I think about social contracts with people and expectations, or just a simple um, I potentially toxic uh, elements of scorekeeping in a relationship, right? Like there's these economics of I do this, and expectations and a return on investment. I mean, I hear people when they talk about all these dating shows now, or these TikToks or whatever your guilty pleasure of entertainment is in that realm, and they speak so transactionally about their relationships. And I mean, most of the time you hear about this with intimate relationships and some of the younger generations. And I just think it's so funny because we've become so conditioned to create to transactionalize or monetize in some way everything, including social arrangements or dating. I mean, I'm
I've
glad I'm
never
not in the
watched.
dating world today, but
I've
you
never
know,
watched one of these shows. Have you? The
I don't. But my wife has watched some of them, or I see clips or some short thing on YouTube or whatever, and an article, and I just think about like the when I hear these little words of phrases of like, you know, this relationship isn't working for me or doesn't serve me, and I'm just like, wow, what what weird terms we've resorted to that sounds so much more like consumer and transactional terminology. And again, it it just goes back to the how many things have been dehumanized, and it is such a rampant problem. Um, yeah,
Well, I love the idea that the Brambled Path will be a digital green space.
yeah.
I love that. I
It's
love
funny.
that.
I think about that. I have behind my house this community built these required storm runoff water areas, and it's full of reeds and some wildlife in there. It's all fenced in, of course, with a chain link fence, but it's pretty massive. It's a good acre worth, and I, I'm I like it. It's peaceful, but it's a built-in green space, so to speak, and I'm glad it's there.
Yeah.
And if a tech company or a YouTube channel or some other venture in this digital world made accommodations for that human connection and being grounded in your environment, and prioritize that digital green space. I don't know where I got that from, but it just whatever inspired it today. Maybe it's the nice weather out here.
That's very good. That's
Yeah.
very good. Now, next time we meet,
Uh-huh.
we're going to dig into some part of the novel,
Okay.
um, and that'll be the next two visits, or next two shows.
Okay.
One will be, you remember the chapter on, or not the chapter, but the part in which he gives, the chaplain gives Mabel a list of um, things that you can do. What's that? What do they call that? The medical, when you're just been injured and you receive instant medical treatment.
Like triage or
Triage. Thank you. That's exactly
yeah.
the word I was looking for. The list of triage things that you can do for yourself after uh, a bereavement or
Ah,
a grief. And
okay.
then the following week, or the following session, we're gonna deal with ceremonies, ceremonial observances.
I like it.
And there also was a speech at the very near the very end of the book in which the chaplain stands up and gives a speech about um, grief and how it's an initiation into a different mode of awareness. Mabel's sitting there, and she said it was pretty good, and she left. She wore her suit. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do.
we're going to intertwine that with both of the sessions.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah,
That'll be
yeah,
good.
yeah. So we will work with um, grief for the first several times. There's a third um, mode of relating to grief and bereavement that didn't come up in the novel that we will get into, which is
Hmm.
also the contemplative or the meditative approaches that one can take towards grief.
Okay.
So we would do triage, I lost that word for a minute, ceremonial observance, and then meditative approach.
Gotcha. I like it. Very
Yeah.
cool.
It kind of
I already
put
have
me,
the wheels turning, and as I'm thinking about personality types and the psychology
ah,
of people, and
oh,
and
that's
which
great.
and which ones fit I mean, which ones people gravitate towards, depending on personality type.
Right.
Yeah, very cool. Interesting.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I love that your wheels are turning. So I'm glad
Yeah,
I brought that up.
I like it. Well, cool. So yeah, this is our introductory experience into the Brambled Path. And although the hosting of this live is on my personal Nic Davis narrator YouTube channel, for any of our viewers looking for the replay, this will be posted on the Brambled Path, which I have actually. I did, in fact, share this with the Brambled Path. So let me pull that up here and get back to the channel. Let's get there. View channel. Here we go. Okay, let me see if I can figure out this technical stuff here. Sharing screens. Okay, do this and do this. Okay, see how that pulls us in. There we go. All right. So, yeah, so the Brambled Path I have listed in this video. The details will be the link to the Brambled Paths channel. And so, anybody looking for more content or the replays of this show, this is where you'll find it. And all future live streams will, of course, be hosted here on the Brambled Path as well. So, yeah, make sure to get to the Brambled Path. And let's see if I can get there. Oh, that's my share link. So, let's do that.
I'm glad you're doing this, not me.
Yep. So when you get to the Brambled Path, we're going to click our subscribe,
Yeah,
and once the video is posted up here, give it some likes, so that you get updated on any future content. And John and I will continue to find engaging topics that kind of broach these tough subjects, and really do it with as much humor and uh, authenticity. I like that. I like authenticity, being
I
genuine.
sat down the other day and came up with 30 subjects.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's awesome.
So we're
I'm
set.
excited.
We're
I'm
set for a
excited.
while.
That's cool.
And for the people that are watching this, we would cherish comments that we could respond to, interaction. We cherish interaction, and also subscribe and like. That's all good stuff because it jiggles the algorithms, doesn't it, Nick?
That's right. It does. Absolutely. Here, let me see if I can pull this back up here. I did pause that. And here's our mugs on the actual broadcast. So you guys can see that. Okay.
Oh,
So
there you
yeah,
go. Our
here we
mugs
go.
on the actual broadcast.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got a good pause in that, but yep. So in the chat, in our live streams, there will be a chat. As you can see, I put in the Bramble Path here while we were talking a little bit. So anybody who wants to add comments during the live stream or after the fact, you can of course go and review comments and add comments after in the replay. So we'll do our best to engage there in either the live form as you're viewing or after the fact in the replay views. So absolutely.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
And then you've got a good additional show that you're doing today. You're going to be.
I am. I am
It's on the
meeting
Nic
with
Davis channel.
yes, and my narrator YouTube channel here. I have another chat with a young man that I'll be who put out a little memoir about his childhood experiences growing up with abuse. Some tough talks about trauma and healing. I'm interested to hear about his story of healing through writing. So
I'll watch this. Maybe
yeah,
not today, but at some point.
writing and journaling. I think that's
Yeah.
very important. And you probably experienced that, and might be part of the triage toolkit we'll learn more about with bereavement and grief and
Amen.
healing. Yeah. So
Amen.
cool. Well, I think that's it for today's
I think that's it, my
introductory
brother.
session. Yeah. So thank you.
Good to be with you, Nick.
Good to be with
Okay.
you too, John. You have
Thank
a good
you,
rest
and
of
we'll
your
see
day.
you. I'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks, John. Take care.
Have a good day.
Bye, Al.
Bye bye.